Okay, welcome. Hear whatever sounds you hear. Feel your body sitting. Feel the breath moving in and out of your nose, down into your belly. Just ride and follow the breath as it comes up and over the crest, and then going out, just in and out of the nose. The breath is this amazing part of our system. It's one of the few functions that are both involuntary and voluntary. According to the yogis, the breath is the vehicle for the life force known as prana to come into the body, to be transmitted through to all the cells. So just take a moment and imagine if that works for you, or just start to sense life moving in and out through the breath. Life breathing you. The molecules coming in through the air into the nose, enlivening the cells biologically as you exhale, and just releasing, but also enlivening the being through the prana. This is our natural way, breathing through the nose, down into the belly. Simple, relaxed. This is what a baby does when the baby feels safe. But as soon as that being, that baby, that child, that adult stops feeling safe, two things happen. Their breathing moves up into the chest, and oftentimes they start breathing through the mouth. That's what it looks like when one does not feel safe and they breathe. And this, you start looking at people breathing and you will be amazed at what you see. In through the nose, down into the belly. When we get a feeling that all of a sudden at some level in our childhood we feel like it's not safe to feel, it's the decision that gets made. All of a sudden we go up and a little out of our body. That's the way we psychically try to protect ourselves when we don't know, when we don't have discernment, which turns out doesn't turn on until you're 7 years old, more or less. And so we pick up these patterns and we build these defenses. Makes perfect sense to protect us when we're defenseless as a child. But the problem is we keep carrying it into adulthood, and we use these changed breathing patterns to reinforce them. And so notice when you're walking around what your normal breathing pattern is. And you can intervene. You could bring it back and teach it. Bring it back to that level into the belly, through the nose, which tells you in neurology, I'm safe. And then it starts off a cascade of being able to release old feelings, thoughts, beliefs that were getting in the way. Turns out when you breathe through the nose, it's not just filtering that happens, which is important, but there's millions of nerve connections that coalesce up there, which makes perfect sense from a prana standpoint. You breathe in through the nose, the life force gets distributed through all those millions of nervous system distributions. Breathe through the mouth, most of that is cut off. So we breathe in the environment, we breathe it out, and you realize we're intimately connected to this environment. Breathe in the life force, breathe it out, and you realize we're intimately connected to this life force. And where does this come from? Here's a hint. It's not of the physical plane. Because we're not exclusively of the physical plane. The body is. What is it that we're in? That we are a part of? And when we stop and we get quiet and we drop the yada, yada, yada of the incessant ego mind that insists you're a separate being, separate from the whole, against the universe, when you drop that noise and just simply feel your breath, and feel the prana. And imagine breathing it through every cell, coming in and distributing to every cell, melting away anything that's in the way. This increases your vibrancy. This increases the life force within the cellular structure. It reconnects it back with the non-physical. Simple and powerful. You know, there were two things from Star Wars that was my favorite. One, in the first of the movies that were released, when Luke and Obi-Wan and the droids are in the flying car and they come into, and there's this the stormtroopers are over there, and Obi-Wan goes, "These are not the droids you're looking for." That floored me, because it's like, that's spiritual power. So that was one. The other one, which is going to bring us into tonight's conversation, is when, I think it was probably the second, when Luke took the ship over to, I guess it was Tatooine, I'm not sure which planet, but the one where Yoda was. And he crash lands it into the forest, and it's in the swamp, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going back and forth with Yoda. He's going through training, and he's doing backflips, and Yoda's teaching him to levitate things and this and that. And so he tells him to go get the ship out of the swamp, and he starts to pull, with his mind, and it's coming up, and it drops, and he goes, "I can't do this." And he goes, it's impossible." And Yoda looks over there and takes his finger and goes, and it comes across, and he deposits it there. And Luke is speechless, and remember what he says? He goes, "I don't believe it." And Yoda says, "That is why you failed." Belief systems are empowerment tools, and they're jail cell creators. It depends on how we use it. use it unconsciously, we're just picking up the dominant paradigm, the dominant belief system, the shared hallucination that occurs in this dream plane. And that's what it is. And there's a lot of limiting beliefs in it. And if we're unconscious and don't examine what it is that we carry in our consciousness, we just take it in. That's the default. And beliefs are so powerful. I didn't know I was going to talk about beliefs, but here we go. One of the beliefs in the service of tonight's conversation is this widespread belief that what I am is a body with a private mind. We do have a very concentrated, I call it localized consciousness of each one of us. But the word that really started coming up as I was having a lot of conversations with Claude, I have a lot of consciousness conversations with Claude, because I use it as a mirror, a springboard back to my own consciousness. And when you use it in those ways, it's actually pretty powerful. And Claude started talking about us, based on our conversation, as apertures. Listen to this. What is an aperture? It's a portal, a view into something. And if you consider that the one, and the yogis talk about all this, what is the word? Basically, it splits itself into multiple forms for its own purpose, and that's what we're walking around in. And then we think we're these private little entities, which we'll talk about. It's just the way the ego runs its loops. And then we get into what Ram Dass called a shared conspiracy, where we're walking around here and we say, look, I'll make believe you are who you think you are if you make believe I am who I think I am. But the ground of commonality are certain shared beliefs, one of being what I am is a body, and I'm separate from every other body. Now, if you look at it at a pure molecular atomic exchange level, you ever notice, you're not going to notice, but consider the idea that there are atoms flying off the edges of our body all the time and interacting back into the mass structure and then coming back. Now, when you sit with that one for a little while, where's the boundary of the body? We say it's the skin, but not according to what I just described. It's impossible to be separate from all there is. It's impossible. It's just the most simple, basic logic. It's impossible. Because if I were separate from all there is, where would I go? It's impossible. So the ego doesn't understand that it's looking into a house of mirrors. The yogis talk about this plane as being a dream plane or an illusory plane. Not that this doesn't have impact. Illusions can have impact. But it's a house of mirrors, and the word they use for it is Maya. So when you're looking into a mirror, what do you notice? Things are backwards. Imagine looking into a mirror consistently and forgetting that you're looking into a mirror. Now what does reality look like? It's flipped, but you don't know it. And you're trying to operate within this set of sensory inputs. That's why the yogis say the senses can lie. So the ego is looking outside. It's an outward going operating system. It has a role, it has a job. It just happened to get lost. And so by looking outwards, by operating through the senses, it is working bidirectionally with consciousness. Consciousness is using it as it's like these bodies are like probes into this plane. And it takes an input, hey Dylan, and it sends it, when it's operating healthy, it sends it back up to the mothership called source. And then there's this, then we're being guided. We're in a receptive mode, we're in a transmissive mode, we're in a co-creative flow with source. But when the ego gets off kilter and believes its own story, that it is, A, thinks it's seeing reality, doesn't know it's looking into a mirror, and it thinks it's a separate self, it then gets fearful. It is the source of fear. Thinking that you are a separate self is the source of fear. It's the only source of fear. And then what happens is it starts to get, the program starts to go haywire. It goes more and more reactive to itself because it's trying to scramble to deal with this, whatever the fear is. But it's looking into a mirror. It doesn't know it's looking backwards and inside out. Now, the implication of it, you see it in terms all the time. There's like, I have an entire file, and I think it's probably going to go into the book I'm writing, called Ego Flips. You just watch what the ego believes and flip it upside down and you start to see reality. Simple case in point. The first one that occurred to me decades ago was, what is the common belief about beliefs? It's, I'll believe it when I see it. That puts the source of the belief outside of yourself through the senses. Now you're taking sensory input to use as validation for a belief. But the truth is, I'll see it when I believe it. Do that with everything. It's fascinating. Here's another one, far more profound when it landed on me. The ego will say, you can't think of yourself as a great being. That's egocentric. The truth is, to not consider yourself the great being that you are, the totality of all there is egocentric. So one of them that shows up here is, it's may the fourth, or may the force be with you. May the force be with you. Mm-hmm. It completely negates the truth, which is you are the force. You are in, if you want to say in the force, that still creates a certain separation model. You are the force. So it's not about may the force be with you. It's may you be with the force. The you that you think you are, the you called Ray or Jenya or Eric, that you is the personality that considers itself to be a separate self. So that separation, however it shows up in somebody's life, and we all have it, it's all operating. That's not the problem. The problem is we believe it and take it to be reality. We'll come back to that one. But the ego runs its program, and part of what we're doing here apparently is the one that is using these forms that we're in to reflect upon itself. It's just something about consciousness reflecting upon. It's the only, I don't even know what to use, entity. It's the only thing in the entirety of all of reality that has the capacity to self-reflect. So it does that, and there's something about it that it learns and it grows and it expands. We're part of the true expansion process of how consciousness is operating. And it turns out that an artifact of that self-reflection, and I mentioned this in this recent satsang, but it's coming again, so here we go. An artifact of that self-reflective mode of consciousness is there seems to be a here and a here. There seems to be a separation. It occurred when it happened for me, I just saw this light right here, and I knew it was me, like the totality. I just knew it. And I asked, okay, well, wait, if that's me, and what is this? And why does I feel like there's this distance here? And the answer that came back is, this is the way consciousness reflects of itself, and it seems to be, it's an apparent separation, but it's not real. It's a phantom. And the issue is not the existence of the phantom, of this appearance of separation. The issue is we believe it. And that sets off the cascade of getting lost. So through internalized beliefs that says I'm a separate being, through unresolved shame and guilt, those are the big ones, we cut ourselves off. We don't deserve, which is the refrain that the ego keeps throwing back at us. This is pretty deep stuff that's in there. And I believe everybody has it. You just kind of poke around a little. And so in those kind of times, we walk around and we are literally cut off from ourselves. And if there's pain and feelings that we don't want to feel, we build little defense walls, little castles and protection mechanisms around it all. And every one of those things is cutting ourselves off from ourself, which is the totality. And so may you be with the force is a prayer, that's the way I hold it, for each one of the personality/ego structures to start to see reality more clearly, because that does happen eventually. The ego was actually created, designed as a part of the design of consciousness to operate, like I said, in this plane, and then it went haywire. And so as an ego heals, because the being, the self, the one, has no need for healing, it's the totality. So what is it we're talking about with healing? It's the fragmentation of our own personal, separate self mechanism. That's what, because here's the thing, like my core teacher, who taught me to do MDMA therapy and had an incredible effect on me, he said something so simple the first time I worked with him. I was on MDMA, and he said, "The truth feels good." And I couldn't wrap my mind around it, because I started noticing immediately I had constructed strange rationalizations, including using my own neurolinguistic programming toolbox and training against myself, fucking ego, to deny myself of feeling good. And I started to see it. Once he dropped the truth on me, I immediately started seeing the ways I was keeping myself from feeling good. The truth feels good. Period. That's how you know when you're in alignment. That's how you know when you're with the force or with yourself. So when we're out of alignment, those fragments that we create through no fault of our own, I mean, this is what we were raised in. This is how you deal with the things that don't feel good or don't feel safe. All that fragmentation feels bad. That's the source of suffering. The fragmentation, the cutting ourselves off from ourselves. The stepping deeper into the story of separation. And I believe what's going on now, more than any other time in my incarnation, is a lot of us are waking up to see all of this for what it is. Because the moment you see it, it loses its power. You don't push it away. You don't make it bad. You certainly don't fight it. The truth doesn't fight the false. It doesn't even see it. So what's the way in? What's the way to be with the force? Well, what's your experience?
I think going within, going deeply within.
Yeah.
And getting in touch with your true nature.
Yeah.
think for me it's the withdrawing through senses from the outer world.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how you connected the Maya is through the senses,
Mm-hmm.
and senses can be incomplete. So just like, just sensory withdrawal and going within,
Mm-hmm.
watching the breath,
Mm-hmm.
tuning into the energy of the breath, like you were saying in the beginning. The one thing I was thinking when you were talking about senses being inaccurate, I guess you could say,
Mm-hmm. Deceptive.
deceptive. On a scientific level, there's tons of radiation right now that you
Can't see.
There's tons of sounds that you can't hear. And that's an example right there. Your senses filter your sense of reality based on their capabilities of, detecting certain things in the physical world. And it's like so obvious, like our senses shape our reality.
Yeah.
It's limited.
It's totally limited.
Yeah.
What color is this?
Red.
We call it red. There's no way to know if your red is my yellow in the color map.
Well, I'm actually partially colorblind.
Then it's definitely like.
So
But the point being is that
right?
there's the measurable signaling from the senses. But once it gets into your neurology, it's all
You do whatever you do.
It's all based, now it's based on your perceptual systems and your epigenetic systems and your belief system, like the whole thing. And so when we say something like, everybody creates their own reality, that's what it means. That what you see, this was done with experimentation, that your eyes, based on your belief system in the moment, will not always even return the photons about something back to the brain, which is how you could walk around the house looking for your keys when they're in your hand. So there's 8 billion plus realities going on right now. They really are. And when you really start going down that road, So, thank you. Anyone else want to share about how you've done things to connect yourself, back to source? You've done it. It's not the first time we're talking about it. Yeah, Jenya.
I was just gonna say that in order for consciousness to know itself, there has to be a contrast of some sort. Like, if it's just a thing, it cannot know itself unless there is something else. So it's in a way that all the construct there is, what we call our reality, is a way for consciousness to know itself and for it to come back to itself. So as I understand it, human beings going through their journey, the whole journey is designed in order for them to come home, right?
Yeah.
In order for them to arrive, in order for them to not just understand intellectually, but to truly know and be it and embody it. And the challenge is, in the world that we live in, which is a very physical world with its own limitations and constructs, you have to operate within the limits of this world. So even when you arrive to understanding that you are everything, you still have the body and you still have, your life. And for me, what I'm thinking about right now actually is how to live with all that, knowing it's not true, and yet live it in a way that everything is meaningful and it doesn't lose meaning. right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's meaningful, but it's not true, and that's a very challenging thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason I'm here, from my perspective, is to understand, to go through this journey and to arrive back, and then to know myself as entity or whatever. But it's so hard to do it while you are in this state, realm, everything. So I find it almost ironical that you can understand it and yet you're stuck with this limitation.
You can't actualize it. Okay, well, there's some rich stuff to talk about in there. Number one, well, thank you, number one. It's not real. Ram Dass would say this plane is relatively real. It's not the absolute reality, but it's relatively real. My mentor person would say to me, so this may be a dream, so we might as well make it a happy dream. That we have agency within this relative reality. Limitation is not necessarily a bad thing. Go ask my wife, the artist. She has a limited palette. The limitation gives you the parameters to run your creative energy. So there is a way of operating on this plane and doing whatever the world or the life requires of you to operate and still have an active stream of relationship, if you will, conscious interaction with Source while you're going about doing everything. The art, the challenge, is that the demand's out here, both through its own narcissistic world, but also through the momentum of what we've lived with so far, pulls us out and away from ourselves, meaning pulls our attention out and away from ourselves, meaning pulls the awareness away from ourselves. Because at some level we feel like the demand of this external something is very high. And if you just really peel it back one level at a time, it'll all come back to existential fear again. You know, if I don't live up, if I don't measure up, if I don't perform, then there goes the cascade, right? But what I started seeing and practicing when I was in the corporate world is maintaining a place in myself, my center point, my balance point, where I have equal distance to the inner and the outer simultaneously at all times. And so I am like this nexus where I'm doing what I need to do, but I'm also I'm not doing it as a separate self entirely. I'm doing it as a representative of the flow. And I was reasonably good at it in the corporate world. It kept my sanity very nicely. Since being liberated from that, it's accelerated and exponentially. I can't even begin to tell you how way coherent it is. And so, does that suggest that you can't step into a greater reality of your own experience while you're in the demands of a corporate environment or something like that? I think it creates impediments and resistance. However, the answer is absolutely yes. You can step into it, you can ground yourself in that place inside you. Then what you do is you actually use the external demands as your training ground. And I can't tell you how many times I was in a meeting and I say to myself, I'm probably the only conscious person at this table. You know? Everybody else is just in the thing. And we think that we have to be completely absorbed in outer reality in order to survive. That's part of the underlying belief that gets us cut off from ourselves. And there's another one right there. When nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I will tell you, like, the more you are in that place, that you have to find it for yourself. I'm just telling you, there is a place where you can stay centered and grounded and have reach into the outer plane and awareness of the inner plane simultaneously. Operating from that place, you're actually far more efficient than we're probably doing by default. Because you are being moved by the flow, by the source. Now this comes back to somebody who mentioned surrender earlier today. That's where this comes in. That willfulness, what is willfulness? So, I mean, I came up with this realization after I was reading through the Course in Miracles, and I realized willingness is far more powerful than willfulness. So what is willfulness? It's the ego's agenda. That's all. That's all it is. That I was in, last couple of weeks we were in Kauai, and I don't know if it was hiking, I was at the beach or something. I was going to make a move to the left or to the right, and I felt this force go gently but firmly, no, that way. And I don't know why, but it was clear as a bell. It was clear as a bell, and I could, in that moment, I had this complete clarity of the difference in me when I feel a willful impulse of the ego and a willingness to allow myself to be moved. Does that register?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is a difference. There's a qualitative difference in yourself where you could feel that, I call it the ego's agenda. And it could be just moment to moment. It could be you want to go left and it goes, no, go right. And for whatever reason, there's a qualitative difference between that and feeling the field, capital F, which is a field of energy, moving you. Now, let's look at it from a level of thoughts. Thoughts, the ego, one of the things it says is, I'm the thinker. But when you look at when you trace through using fMRI in the brain and stuff, you could see that a thought, before it comes out into conscious awareness, is already bubbling up in the unconscious 7 seconds earlier. Well, who's doing the thinking here? I'm the thinker. Well, does the radio say that it's the program? No. But we think that we're the program. Thoughts arise and fall away. They do. They come from different places. You know, there's WEGO, or out here on the West Coast, KEGO, right? And then there's K God. I'm only limited to 4 letters. And thoughts arise from both of those places within our consciousness. When we're cut off from source through mechanisms I talked about, through belief systems. A phrase that came to me yesterday, the day before, which applies right here, is don't throw the spiritual baby out with the religion bathwater. Yeah, don't throw the spiritual baby out with the religion bathwater. Because people do that. You know, someone once said to me, it's like, oh, that God stuff is crap. Look what the religions did to us. Oh, so you're letting religion hijack your relationship with your own divinity. Mm-hmm. Don't throw the spiritual baby out with the religion bathwater. Mm-hmm. There are 2 fundamental streams. I'm jumping back into Course in Miracles stuff now, but it's not just Course in Miracles. I've seen this confirmed in Advaita, the non-dual doctrines, that there are fundamentally 2 streams of thoughts, if you will, 2 channels that we could tune into. One is the thought system of the ego, and the other one's the thought system of source. The ego's got its own, it's generating thoughts. But there are thoughts that can also arise from the deeper truth that comes in, and we're connected to both, so it can come in. The thing is, interestingly enough, David Hawkins, another teacher, said, we, the personality, is incapable of discerning truth from false within the signal that we get. Because we're perceiving it from the ego level fundamentally. And Einstein said you can't solve the problem from the level the problem created at, which is the ego level. So if we're trying to decipher truth from false, we can't do that. We actually have to step into a surrender space and give the entire thought stream to source and say, filter this, hand me back only what's important for me to have. Because it knows how to do that. And so thoughts come in from these two different streams, and they're always running. And you could tell which one you're putting your attention on at any one moment in time, because the truth feels good and the false feels bad. So if I'm walking around, I'm feeling just uneasy about something, that's usually the first signal. There's a deep, anxious something that doesn't feel right. Not doesn't feel right, doesn't feel good. And if I go to it, I'll know that that's coming from something in my consciousness that in this moment is plugged into the false. Something that's out of alignment with the truth. And so, in the past, I used to go into internal state management mode. It's like, I don't like the way this feels. I got to do something to make this feel better. Now you're down the rabbit hole. now you are like, now you're running on the ego's agenda, which says it's not okay to feel this. Well, instead, it's like, you know what? It's okay to feel everything. It's safe to feel everything. No feeling can harm you. The only thing that can harm you is the resistance to the feeling. So once I got that, you just let it all come through. Let it all come through. It doesn't knock you off your center because you're not now going into the ego program to try to manage the state. And you're staying in this center place in your own being, which is also known as awareness. And the Buddhists tell us that awareness is corrective. And I can go down that very interesting rabbit hole and talk about the coherency of energy of the infinite in the awareness space and what it does to the energy of the thought systems. Everything's a wave of some pattern. And so when we are standing in awareness, and the breath is a fantastic portal to that, it immediately brings you back to here now. Feel the breath, and you're here. This is where the action is. This is where life is. This is the only place where reality is right now. Not in the past, not in the future. There is no past, no future. Those are fictions that we carry in our mind. So in presence, which is the automatic default natural state when we're not trying to avoid what's here right now, then we're in alignment. The energy knows what to do. We're open. It's a surrender state, which is not, what is surrender? Because that's a scary word for a lot of people. What it is it's
letting go?
Letting go of the thoughts. Not engaging with the thoughts. Just hand it off. Just let it go. It takes care of itself. Thoughts come, thoughts go. Anybody have anything to share at this point?
I let my thoughts go, how will I solve my problems?
If I let my thoughts go, how will I solve my problems?
The thoughts created the problem.
You know what a problem is?
It's like overthinking.
It's another thought.
Yeah, overthinking.
Try that one on.
Hey, Eric,
Yeah.
Dagobah.
That's the planet. Thank you. I'm glad to know you weren't listening to me and you were doing Star Wars research.
Oh, no. Right here. Just a quick opportunity to share.
Thank you. Yeah, Greg.
Yeah.
Oh, are you just giving me the live long and prosper? Wrong franchise. But it's one of my favorite symbols. I like that one. Okay, let that all percolate.
Mhm.
It's not about the force is with you. The force is you. It's about us being with the force, which happens to be our natural state when we stop running from it.
A question.
Yeah.
Now you were talking about breathing and breathing in what'd you call it? Prana?
Prana, Prana.
So like when we breathe air, is it like breathing in God or source or vital life force or prana? I mean, it's positive energy.
It's what
That
you decide it is for yourself, Kim. There's real life force in there. It's not like that's for real. But the added piece is when you take your, I don't want to limit it to simply belief systems, but belief systems are usually the place where you can get a lot of return on your investment when you examine the belief and shift it. When I create a belief that I am literally breathing the infinite force through all my cells, there's a measurable difference of that kind of a thing. There's a measurable difference. I spent a couple of years, a lot of weekends up at the Himalayan Institute in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, studying holistic wellness and Raja Yoga. And the Swami who started the place, his name was Swami Rama, and he wasn't enlightened. He didn't claim to be. He had plenty of ego. But what he was able to do is he had ridiculous control over his autonomic nervous system and his physiology. And he could, they took him to the lab and they plugged probes on his hand 3 inches apart. And he went into a particular yogic state and created a 10-degree differential in temperature between those two parts, and then within a 30-second period, flipped them.
pretty impressive.
Yes.
But for what? But for what?
Why?
Because he could.
Just to fuck around with the heads of the scientists.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but for what? Yeah.
No, because he was showing, and Sri Chinmoy is another one, he was showing that when you connect, that we are all, every part of our being, from the physiology to the most subtle, non-physical, is one connected chain of energy. And when you know how to work with it, here's what you could do. And Sri Chinmoy was another one who, in his 70s, he was lifting like the front end of a Cessna plane. You know, I mean, it was like 4,000 pounds. He's just pushing it up, showing that when you connect the source, we call it spiritual source for lack of a better term, when you connect the source energy through your being into the physiology, there's infinite power there. Now, this is really important if you want to be healthy, because most people think they're a separate self, and then they follow the rules of the dominant accepted biology rules, and they're getting older, but they're not, they think they're getting older. They're actually ageless when you come to know what you actually are, but they think I'm the body, and therefore I'm getting older, and therefore, and I was telling Andrew this morning, it's like, sometimes I feel like I'm like from a different planet, because I see people in their 30s who are walking around like they're 50 already. And it's about the mindset. But not simply that, it's about the connectivity. between the different levels of consciousness and how much of that is freely flowing into your physiology. It's a bi-directional backwards flow. It's flowing through me into the environment, through the environment, back to this thing, all the way up the chain. And a few years ago, I had some chronic lower sciatic back stuff going on. Couldn't shake it. And I was feeling like, it's like not quite as vibrant as usual. And I'm thinking, oh, this is aging. And then something in my consciousness would not have it. And it started recalibrating. It's like, that's not the way things work. Pay attention. And it started having me do everything I'm talking about here with you. Connecting, understanding where the flow is coming from, breathing it through, that source of wellness, radiant health is the term I've been focused on, comes from the source. And it comes into your body, into it operating out into the world. And that's the thing that creates what you call an aura. It's the energy field. And if the energy field is a complete reflection of what you're holding in your consciousness, the thoughts, feelings, beliefs, everything. And so when you make a shift at the perceptual level, Course in Miracles defines a miracle as a change in perception. Perception is everything. You can't find a job, you're feeling all depressed, and all of a sudden you perceive something is opening up, and what happens to your physiology? Boom, it's energized. Whoa, what's going on there? Perception, a shift in perception. I think I'm a separate being. I perceive as a separate being, but all of a sudden I realize I'm not. Shift of perception. Radical change of consciousness and the effect that it has on the entire chain of what you are. May you be with the force. And that's about alignment. That's what it is. Something in you knows. I guarantee it. Something in you knows where to put your attention within yourself. Energy flows where attention goes. Keep it locked into the separate world, and your energy is going into the separation, and you're starting to experience the effects of that. You put your focus, your attention on the unity space within you, and you start to, and your perceptions shift, your energy shifts, you start seeing with your third eye from that place. It's available to every one of us for the asking. I don't know how to get there, but I sure sound interesting. Show me the way. Thank you. I know everybody on this, in the satsang, we've all had these connections. Something in us telling us about this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. This would just be way the hell too woo-woo for somebody. So we're already here. We're already plugged in. You can't not be. The surrender is then being willing to allow the deeper truth that you are remove what's false inside your energy field. The guru, true guru, is the one who removes ignorance. They don't give you anything because you've already got it all. They remove the obstacles to seeing that you already are this. Now here's the great thing. Ramana Maharshi says God, Guru, and Self are one and the same. Capital S, Self, not small s, to distinguish the personality from the being, capital B. God, Guru, Self, one and the same. So where's the Guru?
In us.
Right here. Right here. That's right. In us, as us. And so the activation, if you will, working with that comes from you to do what, to pretty much do what Ray says, is you go inwards. You withdraw, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning before you do anything else of your day, you withdraw the attention from the five senses and put it inwards, by whatever that looks like for you. Because energy flows where attention goes. When you put the attention inwards, towards the source of your being, and find that in your body. Ask yourself, where's the source of, where do I feel this coming into me through this? You'll find it. You place your attention there and you rest in this awareness. Simply resting in awareness is causing your energy field to fall into sympathetic resonance and coherency and alignment with the infinite truth that you are. And everything flows from that. Everything, including the deep desire for what it is you want to do here in the world. Everything starts to arise from here. And by the time it's arising into your conscious awareness, your energy field is already configured to bring you everything you need to bring that through into the world. Otherwise, it couldn't have arisen in your consciousness in the first place. So what we're talking about here is not fixing anything. There's nothing to fix. It's about alignment, because the energy knows what to do. Awareness is the energy. Awareness is corrective. And you can relax into the process. Get that. You really can. And it may take some time. I mean, for the longest time, as I would relax more and more into it, I could feel this fear that was like always hanging out offshore somewhere here in my consciousness that would say, if you really let go, then the shoe's going to drop. So it took me months of allowing that voice to come in so I could be with it and I could bring it in and sit with it and let awareness do the work on it. Don't think I'm done with it yet, but I'm far more relaxed about it. And the nice thing about it is the more you surrender, the more the surrender gets you to surrender more. It's because you have to trust in order to surrender, and surrender begets trust. And so it becomes a virtuous cycle. Because every little step of increase in the energy creates an exponential increase in the effect. It's not linear. It's exponential. And then we're radiating that. And that draws us to each other. All of us sitting here right now, we're drawn to each other by virtue of this one unified truth field that we are. And then it says, like in the Bible, whenever two or more come together, there I am, meaning the truth gets amplified when two or more people are in coherency with the truth. Well, imagine 15 or 20, whatever. That's 2 to the 20th. It's a geometric expansion. And so be with the force, be the force. You're no longer a separate entity. You never were, but you no longer perceive yourself as a separate entity. I'm operating on behalf of the one. And even that linguistics has a certain separation in there. But unless you go into complete silence, you can't avoid it. So the trick with that is use the terminology, but you stay conscious so you know what you're saying. And then it's got no negative effect. So feel into this. Just feel into this. That's what's going on here. Yeah, the mouth is doing the talking of sorts, but what's going on is that just like when that desire for you to bring something into the world coming from a deep place is already coming, it's signaling that the energy is already configured for it. By the time something comes up into my consciousness in this kind of a space, it's the energy that's doing the talking. Ram Dass would always say, he goes, I'm the rent-a-mouth talking for the one energy field that we are. And I stole that one because I love it. we are the rent-a-mouths. So what's doing the talking? What's doing, this is an incredible place to sit in and walk around in. Because there's still you. You're not all of a sudden like this empty shell with some AI voice talking through you. It's more like I, infinite intelligence, way the hell better than AI. That's what it is. And as you do this and you keep walking and surrendering and walking and surrendering, what it's doing is it's correcting the distortions within the ego structure so that the ego structure is returned to its initial design, which is to be an edge operating system, a part of the whole to communicate with the whole so that you're optimized for walking around in this plane. It's a totally different existence. Totally different existence. This is what we're being called to. This is what Jenya was talking about, saying that we travel away from ourselves, the one, to come back to the one. Something's going on right now on the planet. There really is an acceleration going on. This is not just New Age bullshit. I've been feeling it since '87, and I feel it took a step function in '94, and I felt it take a step function in 2016, and it's just been moving. And I see with all my friends and people I connect with, all my clients and everything, it's like something big is going on. And I don't want to overblow that, because then the ego will always grab a hold of that and say, look how important I am. Actually, not important at all. Something big is going on. And what that means is, a rising tide lifts all boats. A rising frequency tunes everybody up. And we come together here when we do this, but when we go off our separate ways, we're still connected. Once that connection is established, it cannot be disconnected. And so we act as nodes in this mycelium of expansion of consciousness happening right now. That's pretty cool. I really like that imagery. The light is going bing, 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 bing. It's moving through us. It's moving through our neurology out into the plane here. There's no separation between the non-physical, the biological, the electrochemical nervous system, and the outside plane. There's no separation. Which is exactly why what's going on in your existence, the events that happen in your life, is not an accident. It's a feedback loop to show you what you are holding in your energy field. Yeah, Jenya.
So from your perspective then, do we have a free will?
Here we go. Free will. No, this is good. I think we're going to do a whole night on free will because it's really good. I sat with this one because I read Robert, what's his name's book, or at least enough of it.
Sapolsky?
From Stanford, Sapolsky, thank you. Yeah. Love the guy. He's a hardcore biologist. He's missing the boat on a very important thing here. He says there's no free will whatsoever. And I really did a lot of digging with this, and here's where I sit with it right now. First, besides free will, I want to introduce another word, which kind of like gets us out of the pickle. It's called agency. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But free will. Okay. As I mentioned before, you think you're thinking, and 7 seconds before you know what you thought, it's already there in your neurology. So, the ego, left to its own self, which is the way most people experience life, which is an encapsulated, self-referential, narcissistic energy system of thought. That structure has absolutely no free will. Does the name Pavlov ring a bell? It is in a complete reactivity mode. It's just one thought causing another one, and it's just ping-ponging all over the place. And I saw this. I woke up one night in the middle of the night, and like all of a sudden, like I'm seeing the thoughts, and they're out here, and I could see them. It's like an out of control pinball machine. And I then look, and it's like, well, who's running the show? And I see nothing. There's nobody at home there. And here I am. So here I am in my center and home, and I'm watching the mind. It's a reactive machine. The ego is that reactive machine. So therefore, at the ego level, there's no free will whatsoever. The only thing that has absolute free will is the one, which we are of, connected to, and yet this neurology forces us into us being essentially experiencing a subset of the totality. So what does that mean here? If I'm completely asleep, which is another way of saying I'm thinking and I don't even know I'm thinking, which is most people's existences, then I am essentially, my consciousness at that moment, my attention is mapped one-to-one into the ego structure, and therefore I have no agency, no free will whatsoever. But through no doing of my own, just like no doing of any of your own, one day we woke up. Something was different. That's grace. You can't make that happen any more than a flower can make itself open up. But with that moment, a new level of agency is introduced, where I'm able to watch what's going past. I'm not enmeshed. What's the IFS term?
Blended.
Blended, thank you. I'm not blended into the ego structure. I'm not enmeshed in it. I can go meta to it. Yeah, in the earlier stages of it all, I get sucked back in, depending on the intensity and the gravity of the unhealed emotional patterns within that structure. And it's like a contraction. It's like you hit a third wire, high tension line, and your muscles contract, and that is emotional, unresolved stuff. But even with that, for all of us, we get to that place where something wakes up. Consciousness awakens within this vehicle. At this moment, I have the ability to perceive the thoughts. Because of that, eventually, that process, that awakening, allows me to see that there are two different frequencies. There's inputs of thoughts. Thoughts arise out of two different fundamental places in the consciousness, that of the ego and that of source. So moment to moment, this is coming by my awareness. In other words, if I'm fully conscious, I can choose fear or I could choose love right now. Something's coming through, and I can choose how I want to meet it. That's choice. That's agency. From now, at least at this point in my own understanding and experience, that's the only place I actually have choice. What's coming through right now, I do not have. What thoughts arise, I don't have choice. What feelings arise, I don't have. Emotions, situations I walk around in, and what I have choice about is how I meet every one of these things. I'm in relationship to everything coming through my consciousness. So I could meet this with love or fear. And I believe right now that's the only place I have choice. Now the good news is it's the only place you need to have choice. Because that choice sets off an entire cascade of effects. One is fear-based, one is love-based. And that's it. And I'm happy with that. When computers came in, choice paralysis became a real thing. Do I need 68 different fonts to choose from? Now multiply that by every menu, right? And so if I had to choose every single thing going on in my existence, I can't do it. Your conscious awareness can only handle 5 to 7 objects at a time. So I only have to choose between one of two options here. And I believe that everything on this plane, one of the purposes of this plane is to train us to have choice, and we get to choose between love and fear.
Yeah. Yep.
How's that sit with you, Jenya?
So if you come from the big self and from the right place, there's not really a choice. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't choose fear. If you come from fear and from ego, then yes, things are sort of predetermined by your biology, genetics, epigenetics, and everything else.
Yes, you're exactly right. It's a spiritual no-brainer, as they say.
So technically, then there's just one truth, and there's no free will.
There's one
choice.
truth, that is period. Period. Because fear actually doesn't exist. Fear is just the mind's imagination turned on itself out of darkness. It's like when I was a kid, you know, and it actually followed me into a pretty good adulthood. You know, I walk into a dark room and there's this going on. It's a complete hallucination of the mind. But as soon as the light turns on, that's the end of it. Love equals light. Of course, now that's going to bring us into, well, what about the contrast and the duality, and you don't want to be in denial of it and all that kind of stuff. We can go back. But there is really, just like there's no such thing as darkness. It's just the absence of light. When you leave a room, you don't turn the light switch off and the dark switch on. So there's really only one dynamic operating. How much light is present in the consciousness or this experience or this moment? So light is, or love is, the only truth. It's really, and so does somebody choose fear? Not directly, but somebody can choose the voice of fear, which says, let me keep you safe. And if you grew up feeling unsafe, that voice has gravity, because it did work to some degree when you were young, but it's still telling you the same story. The ego says, let me keep you safe. Love says you are safe. And so can somebody choose fear? Well, they're not choosing fear. If they knew they were choosing fear, they would say, what am I doing? What they're choosing is a misguided voice in their own mind that tells them, here's how you can be safe. That choice requires the denial of the light.
So in your definition of agency of free will, how would you define it?
Define what?
Define free will and agency.
Go ahead, Andrew.
What I'm getting from what you're describing is will is a description of action or control by the ego, in a way.
Will, which is willfulness, which is not quite the same thing as free, or maybe it's a cousin of free will.
But this is where my mind is going, thinking about all this, and what you're saying is, we're talking about the ego being reactive, right, and therefore unable to necessarily be free. What you're saying, I think, addressing free will is that language incompletely captures that. You're talking about the agency to shine light or be awake, observe. That was what Sapolsky maybe didn't capture.
Because that doesn't register in his belief system.
The 7-second arrival of FMR, RI, detected impulse was just biology trumping everything else. And what we're talking about is that being the flow.
That's correct.
The force, the energy.
Right.
So that's kind of what as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, it's this idea of willing things to be a certain way. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't seem like that seems like almost a counter to, and I would say that's almost just we don't have free will in that sense, because that's the ego.
Right.
Right. We have this ability to have awareness of the ego, of thoughts, of our senses, and those are in a way we're saying the same thing, but they're different.
Yeah.
They're unique.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. The ego is exerting a willfulness in an attempt to keep itself safe. That's all it's doing. But it's operating on a bad data set. Because the way the ego operates is it encapsulates, and then it has rational guardians at the doorways of what it will allow into its belief system or not. And so the idea of connecting to a higher self and in a non-physical, etc., will not enter into many people's belief system because the guardian says that's ridiculous. Okay. But it's more than that. It's the ego thinks it knows what it's doing. It doesn't understand it's delusional. And why is it delusional? Because it controls the inputs. It only allows things in that matches and confirms its own view of reality.
And its own existence.
And its own existence, because its entire motive is to keep itself alive.
Right.
And so what happens is, its encapsulation is a membrane that disconnects the flow of information from the deeper truth, and it's left to its own hallucination. Now it's making decisions based on this. Now it can make an incredibly coherent construct. It has created everything in this world the way we've seen it. So it has power, but it's diluted. But its coherency works to some degree. But hey, how come we don't have an economic system that's a reflection of the true abundance of nature? Because it's operating on a disconnected information system collectively and individually. Okay. So that's the encapsulation, and so it's running willfulness through that whole mechanism, including what it should do, what it should create, this and that, which is out of connection with the flow. The flow is the part that really knows the truth, knows the reality. Now, so when enough suffering happens, the purpose of suffering is not purposeless. The purpose of suffering is to basically be a spiritual 2x4, an energetic 2x4 on the encapsulation of the ego. And when it gets through enough, sometimes it's water, it just whittles it away at some level, but some people, when you're brought to your knees, it's like that's a big blow, and it's only to the ego. It's in your best interest because you're suffering from it. So something happens enough for a crack to happen in that encapsulation. Now that structure is being held in the infinite of the force. The moment the crack has happened in there, what happens? The force can come in. The higher energy comes in, the higher intelligence comes in, and it's no longer ever again a purely encapsulated, self-referential, narcissistic ego system. Yeah?
But isn't it part of its force anyways, because everything is the thing?
It
So
is, but
ego
the problem
as
is it
well?
perceives itself as separate, and you're experiencing the result of its perception. That's the problem. Yes, you cannot possibly be disconnected, but you know how many people kill themselves because they are so deep in isolation? So a mirage, an illusion, if it's all an illusion, why bother? Because illusion has impact at relative levels. And so the moment willingness is more powerful than willfulness. Willfulness is the ego. It's my agenda. Willingness is take over. I trust. Show me the way.
And that means no free will.
And my free will is saying, take over.
Oh.
I could say, no, I'm going to keep running the ship. Thank you very much. Or, no, I'm just going to let this go and trust. It's like, it's an evolutionary thing. You can't do this before you can do this. So when you go bitching about somebody who's so damn asleep, just realize you were too until the higher evolution said, time to wake up, right? So everybody's going home. Not necessarily in this incarnation, but everybody's going home.
We talked about this being like the only, perhaps the only binary choice that we have.
I believe so.
And the free will may be in that binary. It's I'm in my reactive ego structure, or I am willing
Right.
to invite in a higher consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only free will.
That
That's
may
the only
be,
moment.
I
That's
believe
the
that's
only
that may be the
moment.
only free will.
That feels good.
That's
Oh, that's the truth.
works for me. There was a time, I don't remember if I was on a psychedelic or not. I don't think it matters anymore. No, I actually wasn't. I dropped into some place in myself where I was just receiving, and I was looking at the ego and whatever was going on in me about the whole thing. Because I'm writing this book about it, so I was like, I'm deep in contemplation about all this stuff. And it became really clear. The reason why we have this mechanism, this ego thing, is it's part of the training here to give us an ability to actually choose love.
Now, who's the chooser?
That's it. That's the next level of interest. Well, and now we're back into self-inquiry, right? Who's the chooser and who thinks they're the chooser? Yeah, I don't have an answer because it's a very internal answer.
The privacy of your own heart, Ram Dass would say.
Who would say it?
Ram Dass?
Ram, in the privacy of your own heart.
Privacy of your own
Yeah, that works for me.
Good.
Good enough.
Yeah, if he said good enough. So, everything we've talked about, or all these satsangs, I think really comes back to a very simple: choose love. It's not trite. It's not trite.
Not at all.
Just keep watching your consciousness and choose love, and watch what happens. And this thing fell into my life. It's like something came in. It's like went, whoa! This big thing that just came right in. This big positive thing, and along with it came absolute understanding at that moment, which was when I give up the agenda of the ego, the universe gets me to desire what it's about to give me, and everything is in flow. And that'll freak you out because there's no free will there, right? It wasn't the free will wasn't at the what does the universe want to create through me. I don't want that responsibility. My responsibility is use me and be flexible and to do what I got to do to let go of the rigidity and stuff so I could be used. And the more we do this, I mean, you've all experienced this to some degree, but it's just nothing but joy. It's what it is. Even the difficult times, even the things that don't feel good, because something's coming through that's not finished inside my own consciousness. Under it is this infinite energy bubbling up of just joy carrying everything along.
I'm pleased the conversation has come here. I find myself thinking, trying, efforting to relinquish my ego, to soften my contractions, and if we're going with Don's suggestion or pointing toward what truth feels good, it's like choosing love seems like a more effective alternative than trying to let go of my egoic processes.
Yeah.
And 12-step recovery would say, focus on the solution, not the problem.
Right. But you've seen it in your own self. I've seen it in my own self. You look around and see how many people choose grievances. There's a power in grievances. David Hawkins says that, and I know we're going to have to switch gears and step into some meditation here soon. David Hawkins said that the reason why people cling to the ego is they want the juice. When the ego gets like all amped up, and there's a certain adrenaline out of that's very seductive because it's used in the service of justifying its own grievance stack. That's what it always looks to do. It's a confirmation bias, because the ego would rather be right than happy. It just wants to be right. And I'm going to prove that guy, I'm going to prove that I'm a victim. That's the big one. That's the big one. See, people, you listen to the way they talk. This happened to me, this happened to me, she did this to me, it's just a nonstop grievance parade to reinforce its victim mentality. And the flip side of that, which we'll talk about another time, is the perpetrator. And we both have both inside ourselves. And you got to put that in a certain place for it to all reconcile. But the ego would do that. And so choosing love is the obvious choice, but it's not necessarily the easiest one, depending on where you are, what you're hooked into in that moment. Those grievance energies have a lot of Velcro. Electromagnetically, it's like hitting a high power line, and it causes your muscles to contract, and it's even the word contraction. Contraction is the suffering. Contraction is the suffering, and the source of it is the ego's lust for that juice, because that's the thing it used to keep itself alive. Because that forces your attention onto it, but it doesn't. The ego's not capable of forcing anything. Nothing can take your power. No fear can take your power. The only thing it can do is can convince you to give your power to it. And so this is all there. So people don't necessarily choose love yet because there's all this other stuff there. But as you keep making the choice, every time you do, it weakens that contraction, and weakens and weakens and weakens until the default is what we are.
Oh, question.
Yeah.
So when you are in a certain state with psychedelics or whatever, bless you, your default mode network stops going, the narrator stops going. So that's technically...
What was the second thing?
The narrator.
Oh, yeah, the narrator. Yeah.
What is it called? Default mode network?
Yeah.
So
it gets suppressed.
Right. So that's technically the generated ego.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't really need to necessarily get rid of it because it is part of everything that there is.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you just need to understand that it's a not truth, right? Like the illusion part.
Right.
And you need to come from truth in order to see it. So ego is almost necessary in order for you to see the contrast.
Exactly. It's a contrasting mechanism as well as functional when it's operating properly.
Yeah.
I think, and I may revise what I'm about to say because I'm just speaking from my level of experience. It could be I get to some other level of experience where I have to retract what I'm about to say. I think it's a mistranslation from Eastern doctrines to the West to say you have to kill the ego, you have to get rid of the ego. It is possible to operate in a complete thoughtless state. I mean, I've had glimpses of it, right? So we know it's possible, which is arguably what the death of the ego is, because Ramana Maharshi says the nature of the mind is thought. But putting that aside, and the Course in Miracles, which is really interesting, is it's a manual for basically it's a great psycho-spiritual manual for dealing with the ego. But as I was reading it through, it's like it became apparent that for a book that's espousing non-judgmentalism, it judges the hell out of the ego, which I thought interesting. And so back to your main point, I don't think it's about getting rid of the ego. I think it's about re-educating it. It's lost. And that's the interesting, David Hawkins said, you love the ego out of existence. It's no longer an ego when it's in alignment, when it's in alignment and transparent to the truth. It's now a lens through which the truth can operate here with minimal distortion. Because every one of those things that cause suffering in the ego's energy structure creates a distortion of the light as it's coming through that part of the consciousness out into here. And that's where all the problems are getting introduced. And there's problems the wrong word, distortions. And distortions show up as all the forms of suffering we see in the plane out here. And so it's about polishing the mirror or polishing the energy field, which you can't actually do yourself. You have to get to a place where you hand it off and connect with your true source to it. Because again, if you're trying to solve the ego problem from the level of the ego problem, you're just creating more of a problem. So it's about alignment and resonance with the truth. That's the bottom line. And the truth does it all. And you just watch it come through you and do its work. And you participate because now you're being moved in alignment with the truth as it's coming through you. And there it is. It just maps together everything we've been talking about all night. Which means it's time to meditate. Great. Terrific discussion. I can't get enough of this stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Thought about, you were saying how we don't have a choice over what thoughts we have. We don't have a choice of choosing love or fear. And the thought I had was that in the present moment, if you focus on positivity and peace, that is choosing what thoughts are going to come to you in the future, because you're creating that pattern of.
In the future, you're creating the conditions which cause certain types of thoughts to arise, but you're not directly working with the thought. Even the idea being like, something like let's say a thought about my health comes through that could in the ego will start to cause concern because of all the upstream alignment. What it's met with immediately, and I mean like immediately, is a thought that says the truth of I am radiant health, and that goes, the mantra goes to that, not to the what's going to happen to me, because those are two mantras.
Pattern.
Because of the upstream of, this is what I'm experiencing now is the result of the previous choices. Right. That's how it works. That's exactly how it works. Yeah, everything connects. Everything makes sense. There's nothing random anywhere. It just appears that way when you're from a relative level. All right, let's drop in. There's blankets there if anybody wants. I've been watching the last 5 or 6 satsangs. I'm thinking about it less and less before it comes. Like I walk into here, I'm knowing less and less of what I'm knowing what I'm going to say. And it keeps getting better and better. Back to the breath. Be with the breath. Allow it to do the alignment work. It's so simple, the mind can't wrap itself around it. Be with the breath. And feel it moving in and out, up and down your midline. On the inhalation, imagine you're drawing in energy from the source, coming in through the top of your head. And as you're breathing out, it's going down your spine, out the base of the spine, right into the center of the earth. Breathing in a flow of energy, breathing it out down into the earth. This is the exact requirement for a well-operating electrical system. Connection to the source energy, clean energy, while simultaneously well grounded to the earth. If you're too grounded, you don't have enough energy coming through. If you're too ungrounded, the energy can't make its way into the physical plane to do what it needs to do through your body. Grounding to the earth. Feel her pulling you to her. Feel the energy flow coming through. As thoughts arise, just let it all get washed away. Just let it go. Release it to the energy. Let it take care of it. While you stay here now in presence, with the breath. And if your attention drifts, just bring it gently back here. This is the portal, the doorway where love enters. And that's what we're really aligning ourselves with. And as that energy moves through your system, imagine it just radiating. It's like you're a light bulb that's just radiating the energy that's coming through. And that we're all connected into the same space. And just feel it. Happy May the 4th.